More than 100 deputies surround Spahn Ranch. It is just after 6 in the morning. Inside are Charles Manson, members of the family, weapons, stolen vehicles, and some of the people who, just 1 week earlier, had taken part in one of the most horrifying murder sprees in American history. If there is one moment when the story of Charles Manson should have ended, it is this moment. But it did not end. On August 16, 1969, 1 week after the Tate-LaBianca murders, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department raids Spahn Ranch. But here is the strange part. They are not there because of the murders. They do not know they are standing in front of the people America is looking for. As far as the deputies know, this is a completely different investigation: auto theft. And the truth is, they came to the right place. On the ranch, investigators find stolen vehicles, car parts, altered identification numbers, weapons. So this part matters. Manson and his followers were not innocent people swept up in a police mistake. They were guilty of the crimes the police had come to investigate. The police simply did not know about the much larger crime yet. Now imagine the scene from their point of view. 1 week earlier, people from this group had murdered Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, and Stephen Parent. The next night, Leno and Rosemary LaBianca were murdered too, and now just days later, before sunrise, more than 100 deputies are surrounding the place where they live. They have no way of knowing why the police are really there. Maybe it is the cars, maybe it is the weapons, maybe it is the murders. Because from his perspective, everything could have ended that morning. Dozens of people are arrested. Charles Manson is arrested too. The police search, the police find evidence. The vehicles are there, the parts are there, the suspects are there, and the Tate-LaBianca killers are right under their noses. At this point, it should be over, but then something happens that almost sounds impossible. There is a mistake in the search warrant, not a mistake about who they were, not a mistake about the ranch, not a mistake about whether there was evidence. A mistake in the date, a technical error, but enough to damage the legal validity of the search. And within days, Manson and his followers are released. 1 week after the murders, after a raid involving more than 100 deputies, after the police found real crimes, after they arrested the right people, they walk out. This is one reason I find it hard to see Charles Manson as a criminal mastermind. Not because he was not dangerous, he was. Not because he was not manipulative, he absolutely was. But again and again, Manson does not look like a man who is always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He looks like a man who survives moments that should have destroyed him. And the Spahn Ranch raid may be the clearest example. The police did not miss him because he was a genius. They missed him while he was standing right in front of them. But the story does not end there because in hindsight, this failed raid did not just allow the family to escape. It pushed them into the final chapter of the story. After their release, Manson and his followers leave Spahn and move deeper into the desert to Barker Ranch. And that matters. Spahn was near Los Angeles. Strange, isolated, run down, but still close to roads, close to the city, close to the outside world. Barker Ranch was different, deserted, hot, isolated, a feeling that the group was being sealed inside the world Manson had created for them. And when an extreme group comes under pressure, it does not only tighten, sometimes it cracks. This is where Paul Watkins, Brooks Poston, and Paul Crockett enter the story. Watkins and Poston had been inside Manson's world. Crockett was older, a desert prospector, a spiritual seeker of sorts, but also someone who seems to have understood what Manson was doing to the people around him. And out there in the desert, something begins to shift. Not all at once, but it happens. A doubt, a question, another question, and then another moment where Manson looks less like a prophet and more like a man desperately trying to hold on to control. In one of the most memorable stories from this period, Manson tries to sneak into the bunkhouse where the men who are drifting away from him are staying. But instead of total fear, something else happens. They see him, they understand what he is trying to do, and the aura around him begins to break. Once people who used to fear you begin laughing at you, something deep has changed. Because Manson did not control people only through force. He controlled them through myth, through the feeling that he knew something they did not, that he could see the future, that he understood the world, that he could read them from the inside. But in the desert, around people who were beginning to free themselves from him, that myth started to collapse. And that would become crucial, because Watkins and Poston were not just people who left Manson. They were people who could explain him. They could explain the language, the ideas, helter-skelter, the way Manson took songs, visions, fear, racism, and apocalypse and turned them into a belief system in which murder began to seem possible. Without people like that, the prosecution could still prove who stabbed whom. But it would be much harder to prove why Charles Manson, who was not inside the Tate house during the murders, belonged at the center of the case. And in that same desert chapter, another part of the collapse begins. In October 1969, police raid Barker Ranch. Again, not because of Tate and LaBianca, again, because of other charges. But this time, it does not end with everyone quickly walking free. Susan Atkins lands in jail, and there, inside a cell, she starts talking to two other inmates, Virginia Graham and Ronnie Howard, and she says too much. She talks about the murders. And the women report what she says to the authorities. In other words, the Spahn raid failed, but that failure pushed the family into the desert. The desert accelerated the collapse. The collapse created witnesses. And the next arrest created the moment when Susan Atkins opened her mouth. So what was the Spahn Ranch raid? A police failure? Yes. An almost unbelievable stroke of luck for Charles Manson? Absolutely. But in hindsight, it may also have been the moment when his luck started turning against him, because that morning in August, the police caught Charles Manson. Then they let him go. But what looked like the perfect escape became a chain of events that led him straight to trial. And that may be the most important thing to understand about Manson. He was not invincible. He was not always ahead of everyone, and he did not control the story the way his myth wants us to believe. Sometimes he simply survived someone else's mistake, until the next mistake did not save him, it destroyed him.